Charizard! This must be my lucky day! Eevee, I choose you!
Eevee, what the? Put me back.
Wait, why? You can take it.
You have got to be kidding me. That thing over there is a literal dragon. What do you mean I can take it?
Well, actually, it's a fire and flying type. I don't care. That thing can still eat me if he doesn't decide to cook me first. But you know, bite and scratch. You'll be fine.
Oh, you know, bite and scratch. You'll be fine. If you're so confident, then you go fight it. Now put me back in the ball.
But
put me in the ball! Hello, all you people. I'm Doodle the Doodle Griffin, and welcome to another episode of Doodling with Doodle, the show where I say the word doodle like 1,000 times. And by that opening skit and the title, you probably have already guessed that today's episode is about Pokemon. So if you want to join me, just grab a sketchbook or a tablet and let's get doodling. The first Pokemon game I ever played was Pokemon X. Yes, the first 3D Pokemon game. The Pokemon game that gave us the new fairy typing and also Mega Evolutions. The Pokemon game that hardcore fans absolutely hated until other games came out, and then they were like, oh wait, maybe it wasn't that bad. I, however, didn't care, because I was 10 at the time, and I loved it. Then again, I am also a sucker for anything that lets you collect cute and cool looking creatures. Sue me. Anyway, I got X because I like the box art legendary the best, and I really like X's version of Mega Charizard, you know, like the one with the black and blue flames. Well, I guess the flames are blue, Charizard itself is black, but moving on. Especially since when I was younger, back in the day, my favorite Pokemon was actually Charizard. Yes, I know, how original. Charizard was my favorite Pokemon, but in my defense, little me was absolutely obsessed with dragons. So when you have basically a dragon right there, of course I'm gonna love it. To this day, I still really like Charizard. I have a plushie of it after all. But moving on, I remember the copy of X that I got actually came with a code to get a level 100 Mew, like right off the bat, which is kind of crazy. At least for me it was at the time. It was crazy. I actually don't know how many people got that code. It could have been thousands of people, but I just thought it was special. Let me have this one. I punched that code in as soon as I could. I got my level 100 Mew, and the first thing I did with it was put it in the Pokebox, because I wanted to play the game how you were supposed to. The only time I used that Mew was during the battle against the Elite Four and the Champion, and that was it. The other thing I remember while playing X was when I got to a certain point in the story, I got completely lost. I couldn't figure out what to do next. I even searched all over the map and I still couldn't figure it out. I talked to every NPC I could to try to find some sort of hint, and I still could not find anything. So instead of using the internet, to look up for a walkthrough, because I didn't think of it at the time, I decided I was going to do the tagline of this franchise. I was going to catch them all. I had so much cash from beating other children's pets senseless that I just bought the max amount of Pokeballs you could buy. I went out and hunted every single Pokemon I could. I racked up so much XP that my Pokemon were jacked. Then one day, while I was wandering around the main city of the game, I noticed that a door was open that I haven't seen before. So I went inside, and I actually stumbled back into the story that I got lost with. Needless to say, I accidentally walked right into the main villain's base, Team Flares. Remember how I said I gained so much XP? Well, I gained so much that my Pokemon level was so high that I just mostly one-shot Team Flare. It was kind of funny. And here I was trying to play the game like you were supposed to and failing. Anyway, my Pokemon team while playing X was just your average Pokemon team, having whatever I thought was cute or cool. And then the starter, and later on adding the legendary, like every other 10-year-old and how they play. Yeah, I put no strategy into playing the game at all. I still don't, but Another thing, I would be lying if I said I didn't have to look up a synopsis for the game story, after years later when I randomly remembered it. Because I remember the story being very weird, and when I looked up the story, I was not wrong. The Pokemon X's story is wild, let me tell you that. However, there is another game that I played that I'd like to talk about. A game that is the new hated child of the Pokemon fandom. A game that was pretty scuffed on release date. A game that may go down in infamy because it was so scuffed, though probably not really, considering that is the norm for most AAA games. But anyways, that Pokemon game was Scarlet and Violet. Ah yes, Scarlet and Violet, the first mainline Pokemon game that takes place in an open world. And like I said earlier, is the new hated child of the Pokemon fandom. At least until the next game comes out, because no one hates Pokemon more than its fans. Look, I'm not going to defend or excuse the poor quality of this game. However, I'm not very much of a game critic. I mean, I still criticize games, but how I judge games are not just on the general quality of the game, but how much I have fun with it. A game could be the most broken thing in the world, but if I have fun while playing it at the end of the day, I'm still going to like it. I may not recommend it to anyone, especially if they're really picky, but I'm still going to play it because I had fun with it. And in my opinion, Pokemon Scarlet was okay. It wasn't bad, but it also wasn't great either. It was just kind of okay. I still had fun playing with it, and for the most part I still like it, but it's just kind of lacking in so many ways. Like, it was kind of too easy. The gym leaders, Team Star, and the Titan Pokemon were all just very easy to beat. I didn't even beat the gyms in the right order. I accidentally went for some of the harder ones before some of the easier ones, and I still had no trouble with it. The only time I lost was to some rando on a mountain because I decided to pick a fight with them, forgetting all my Pokemon were less than half health, and the trainer's typing just happened to stack up against mine. I probably could have won, but I didn't want to waste all my revives on some rando, so I just took the loss. The only other time that I started somewhat sweating was during the final boss fight against the robot lady. And you know, that's the final boss fight, it's supposed to be hard. But I still didn't lose either. There are some things I do like about this game. I like how you get the legendary at the start. You know, it changes up the formula, and it gives you time to bond, which, you know, gives the story more value. Because the legendary is actually pretty important for the story. I also find it funny how you're the one picking fights with random strangers instead of the other way around. I just think that's funny. However, the thing about this game that bothers me the most is that most of the new Pokemon aren't that great. In design-wise, I mean. Like, there's a few exceptions. Like, I really like Fuecoco. He's super cute, and I just like the whole, like, Fuecoco line, too. I actually like the legendary, too, and there's also a few others, but, like, Tito just had so much promise, but the rest of his line is just kind of meh. Like, the starters in this game, I feel like got hit the hardest. For me, the only good starter, like the good looking one, is the Fuecoco line, but like, that's it. I don't really like the other two. Usually in other games, even ones that I haven't played, there are at least 2 starters that I like the designs for. Sometimes it's all 3, but for Scarlet, Game Freak just really dropped the ball. However, that being said, there is a Pokemon that debuted in this game. A Pokemon, for me at least, by itself is the only reason why I need Scarlet and Violet to exist. A Pokemon that makes up for all the issues. That's right, I'm talking about Clodsire. Probably my new favorite Pokemon ever, and the best Pokemon design ever. I love Fuecoco, and you know, I like Charizard and some of the Eevees, but I mean, who can compete with this kind of perfection? I call her nubs. Clodsire also helped me appreciate Quagsire more. Having Quagsire also becoming one of my favorites. Some of my other favorite Pokemon are, as well, you know, Fuecoco, Charizard, and the Eevees, although I like some more than others. I think they're all great, but I definitely prefer some more. Now, my top 3 favorites being Eevee, Jolteon, and then Vaporeon. No, not like that. Stop it, you internet degenerates. Thanks a lot for ruining it. But anyway, speaking of Eevees, that's actually what this main artworks of the video is for. I'm going to be drawing my own new Eeveelutions of types that have not been done yet. That's actually what I'm doing right now for this, like, the sketching portion of the videos. But for this, I'm going to be following a few rules. The main one being, well, that it has to still look like an Eevee, and the other one being that I'm going to try to stick to what I thought to be the original design conventions of, you know, Eevees. What I mean, like, original design conventions, I mean, you know, like the first Eevees being Flareon, Jolteon, and Vaporeon. See, when you look at the original Eevees, you can see they have a lot of similarities between them. That being having similar body types, head shapes, And another thing is that they all have these, like, something around their neck, either being fluff or fins. See, a lot of people don't understand why Vaporeon has this fin thing around its neck. But when you compare, Vaporeon next to other Eevees, it starts to make sense. I think one of the design rules of an Eevee when Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow were first being developed was that an Eevee had some sort of neck feature, to match Eevee. So knowing that, Vaporeon design makes a lot more sense. They couldn't just add fluff because Vaporeon is a water type, so it wouldn't make very much sense. So they gave it a fin around its neck. However, in later games, they dropped this, going for a more sleeker design with Umbreon and Espeon and even Leafeon. But for my design, I'm going to try to stick to the same design philosophy. So that means having similar body type, head shape, and also having some sort of either some sort of neck feature, like how Eevee has. Just so you know, I don't know if this is actually what Game Freak was going for when they first were originally developing, Red and Blue and Yellow. This is just an observation I made when comparing the original, 4 Eevees. The types that I chose to make new Eevees of were 3 types, that being Bug, Flying, and Dragon. Also, keep in mind my knowledge on Pokemon game mechanics and how they work is very little, so I won't be putting any stats or moves or anything like that. Just the name and the secondary title and what kind of Pokemon it is. The first type I will be starting with is the Bug type. Now, I thought coming up with a cute bug type design for an Eevee was going to be hard, until I remembered about moths, more specifically poodle moths. Now, for those who don't know, poodle moths are a species of moths that are actually made by humans, and they were bred for their soft silk. And they're just one of the most adorable things. Since this is a bug type, I decided to give this Eevee 6 legs, since most bugs have 6 legs. And I also decided to make, the tail of this Eevee the fluffy abdomen of the poodle moth. So that's why it's so big and thick, because the poodle moth's abdomens actually look like tails. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Another thing the poodle moth has are these really cute antennas, so I decided to give my Eevee those kinds of antennas too. And for the coloring, I stuck to a similar coloring as the moth, except I made it a little bit more creamier and added darker brown bits, to mix it up a little bit. I made the eyes green, since it's a bug type, and for fun, I also decided to give it a shiny form too, based off of the rosy maple moths. And for its name, it shall be Mophion, the moth Pokemon. Yes, I couldn't come up with anything better. If you guys can come up with a better name, have at it. I could not think of anything better than that, though. So real quick, as I was writing this, I realized that other people, lots of other people, already had the idea of making a moth Eevee. I should have realized that when designing this, because moths are pretty cute and it just, makes sense. But I did not realize it, so I'm not trying to steal anybody's concept. I guess I just wasn't original as I thought it was. So this is just, my take on the concept of a moth Eevee. We good? Okay. Moving on to the next Eevee, and this one is a flying type. For this design, I wanted to lean into the cloud concept of a flying type Pokemon. I wanted this Pokemon to have a big fluffy cloud-like tail, and cloud-like fur in general. I also had an idea that this Pokemon would use its own tail, to fly on. It would sit on it like it was sitting on a cloud and would just fly around that way. It can also use its tail to create big gust of winds. You could probably tell I put a lot more thought into this one. That's because I had this idea for this concept for a lot longer than the other ones I'm going to be making. For the coloring, I made it a bluish off-white, and I gave it sky blue eyes since it's a flying type. And for the shiny, I decided to make it a dark gray to represent storm clouds. I named this Pokemon Nubius Eon, the cloud Pokemon, using the Latin word nubis, which means cloud. For the last Eevee I'm going to be designing is going to be the dragon type. And for this, I wanted to take inspiration from Chinese dragons. So I made the body type more sleek-like Vaporeon's and Espeon's body type. Since this is the Chinese dragons and they tend to have very long snake-like bodies. I also made sure to give it some horns and some flowing hair that went down its back and also around its chest, because we gotta have that chest floof. I also gave it a little, I guess it's little, not really little, but a very long little mustache, since, some Chinese dragons have those. For the color scheme, I looked at a bunch of pictures of dragons, and I noticed the most common colors were red, gold, and green. So I made that my color palette. But little did I know that color scheme was going to give me so much trouble. I tried so many different combinations, but luckily I found one that I liked. And for the shiny, I just kind of swapped around the colors. I named this Pokemon Westion, the Journey Pokemon, a name inspired off of the Journey to the West story. And there we have it, folks, 3 new Eevees. I really like how all these designs turned out, but I think my favorite has to be Nubiason. Let me know in the comments what your favorite design is. And what's your favorite Pokemon too? You already know mine's Clodsire. Maybe I'll make another Pokemon video one day where I design more original ones. But for now, it's time for me to wrap this up. Thanks for y'all watching, and I will ABC y'all in the next one. Goodbye!
Nub.